This is the jpeg2RAW podcast. I'm Mike Howard. I'm broadcasting from the basement of Knob Studios here in sunny and hot Atlanta. jpeg2RAW is a photography podcast for the amateur photographer. You can find us on the web at www.knobstudios.com, and you can contact the show by emailing us at podcast@knobstudios.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Flickr, and Twitter by searching for jpeg2RAW, or just follow the links on our website. So let's go ahead and get started. This is jpeg2RAW, show number 16, and we're coming a day later than usual. And we had two reasons. One was mine. Last night was my wife's birthday. I won't tell which day it was, which year it was. She won't.
I was gonna say we know which day already.
Yeah, you know which day, but you never know. She may be listening, or she may find out. She would not want me to share what her age is.
We'll know if a roller pin comes behind and hits you in the head.
Let's just say she's about 25.
There you go.
And then you unfortunately had a funeral to attend.
That is correct.
Yeah. So, but fortunately we were able to work out something tonight. We'll try and keep tonight a little bit shorter than usual. We've been going about an hour and a half. But when we have those good guests, I want to give them some time to talk, and heck, even fitting it in the hour and a half is difficult. The other thing I think I'm going to do, Tim, is I keep saying this is the end of the show, then we'll talk to chat. Right. I think I'm just going to make that part of the show, because we have so much good stuff in the after show, and I've been including that in there. The after show, where we're interacting with chat, that, heck, I might as well just include that as part of the show, make that an official part of the show.
Well, I'll tell you, I was listening to the show last night with my father. I hate listening to myself on the podcast afterwards. I'm like, I do not sound like that.
It does take some getting used to. When you're like me and you have to listen to it so many times because of the editing, it's something you just got to get used to, and I've gotten used to it now. But at first, it is painful. When I was on some of the other shows, Home Service Show or Home Tech Show, to this day, I've still not gone back and listened to those.
It's painful. It really is, because I'm like, I can't even listen to myself. My father's like, no, that's what you sound like. I'm like, no, I know I don't sound like that. I sound different. It's the way the sound reverberates in your head, I guess.
It is. And, speaking of that, as before we had Ali on the show, I had the raid crash with all my photos and the debacle that took to recover everything. I eventually recovered everything, which proves, we've preached backup here. In the past, that just proves the importance of backing up and having a good backup solution. Mine did take me a while to get it back, and I need to do some tweaking, but I did get everything back. That set me back some, and when I went in time-wise, not like in files, I got everything back. But when I went to edit the show and get everything ready, I haven't shared this with you, Tim, but I have been struggling with the video. Was that me or you?
No, my doorbell rang. My son's home now.
Okay. I've been struggling with the video feed in that I thought I had it all worked out. I go and I produce show number 14, and it comes out 500 meg. And what's going on? It should be half that. So I play with it, and then I come up with one or two things. It's either too wide, and we all look extra heavy, which is not good. Which is not good, particularly for me.
Or me. I've been putting on the weight again. So.
Or the other way is we all look squinched, which looks fine with me, but the rest of you guys look like you haven't eaten. So I think finally this morning or when I got home, I've solved the issue. It's Handbrake has so many different. Have you ever played with a Handbrake?
Yeah, I've done it, and it's a very powerful program. But yeah, no doubt that there are more options in there. It's almost painful.
I have literally produced the show 42 times. Each time taking a half hour, so you can do the math on that.
Yeah.
And I think I finally figured out, but it has so many options between the depending on what file you bring in, and then the output. And it didn't. it didn't seem consistent, and I think I've solved it. So now I'll get those shows out, and I think I'm going to go back in time and redo those shows that were really big, the 700 meg shows. So what's funny is I'm seeing people. I can tell when we pick up a new subscriber, and they go back and get every show in the list.
Right.
And hopefully that continues. Hopefully we continue to get new subscribers, and for those people who come on later, for the rest of us who already downloaded it and had to painfully download 700 meg, I don't want to have that for the people coming down the road. Might as well go ahead and redo those. That way people will when they go to do it again, they'll get a much smaller file, which at really the same quality. So I think I can get those things down to around 250 meg, and hopefully that will solve it. The thing I think where it messed up is you can save a profile in Handbrake, but it really doesn't save everything. It saves just a couple of things, and all these other things that are dynamic change every time you do it.
Well, I was using another program also for converting DVDs. I think it was by SliceOff, Clone DVD, and I wound up trying then Handbrake, and Handbrake is definitely more powerful. For one thing, it's free, and but I haven't been able to figure out all the items to it that I want to. There's more that needs to be done, and I just got to have the time to play with it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to zoom in on just the person talking. There we go. And this. So as long as we're talking about the show and doing some what do you call it, just admin here, talking about different things at the show. I have added an ad below the chat window. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, it's translucent, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's probably different for whoever's in there. For me, it's some kind of create a free YB whatever bar. It's Google AdSense. And if while we're not looking for the show to make money, I wouldn't mind if it recovered some of my costs. And just by clicking on these little ads, you don't have to do anything after you click on it, but after clicking on the little ad, the show does get a little bit of revenue. There's some other places where we have Adorama and a Amazon ad. On those, if you click on them and then go buy whatever you're going to buy at Amazon, the show does get a little bit of money from those. And it doesn't cost you anything extra. So if you're going to buy something from Amazon already, it does. We do get a small commission at no extra fee to you. And next week, let's go ahead and I guess we continue with the admin. Next week we have Ashley back on. And then if you remember Ashley from I think show number 10.
She was very good. Very good.
Then the week after is what, Thanksgiving's week, right?
That yes, that's the 22nd.
Yeah, and that one, I'm not going to mention who it is, but I don't think we're going to do the show the regular time. We weren't going to do a show at all. And Tim and I, we're not doing a show. We were going to take that week off, but I have the opportunity to have a special in-studio guest that at some point during that week, me and this person will record the show, and I'll put it out later. I'm not going to say who that person is.
See if there's any responses in chat. They're about 10 seconds behind us, though.
Yeah. Then December 13th, we have Rachel coming back. And when Rachel comes back, we're also going to do a special, something special when she comes back. She's going to do a giveaway of one of her workshops. So we're going to probably, after the Ashley show, start publicizing that.
Well, with any luck, before that show, I might even. I actually wanted to take one of our workshops. They looked pretty good, the first one for sure, and possibly even the second one. So.
Well, I imagine that you and I are exempt from winning that.
Yeah, I would think so.
But she is going to be on the 13th, and we will hold the contest starting probably not long after Ashley's on the show, maybe the week after or the week after Thanksgiving, something like that. And hold a little contest for who can win that thing. And then in January, I'm not going to say who it is, but we have another really special guest, and I think we're going to have a special co-host that, in addition to Tim and I, on that show.
Oh, now you got me in suspense here.
Haven't I told you who the special co-host is?
I don't think you did.
I think I did. I thought in the email I did.
All right, maybe. All right, then I think I. All right, maybe I do know who it is.
We can talk offline. Keep the suspense for
Yes.
not just a few people out in chat, but the people listening to this later. You got to come December 13th to find out. Okay, I think that's it for show news. Did you have anything else?
No, other than we talked right before the opening. I was looking once again, as everybody out there is pretty well aware, I'm looking to upgrade my camera to the new Sony, and I track a site called Sony Alpha Rumors because the camera is Sony Alpha, and they're posting on there now that it's almost sold out, and the Thailand floods consequences are worse than the tsunami that hit Japan, and they're expecting now the camera not to be back in stock until March. And one of the other impacts of this, Sony was getting ready to release another camera, the A99, or it's rumored to be the A99, which would be the pro level camera with a full frame sensor. And now they don't know if they're even going to announce the camera because you can't announce the camera and not be able to produce it. So it looks like it's really bad over there. A friend of mine actually just left for Thailand today, and he was wondering, going back and forth, should he go? Is it something he can do? He was in touch with the travel company he was going with. They're telling him it's okay. A lot of people are canceling. The State Department had on their website, unless you're going for business, do not go, but the tourist destinations are fine. So it's like, well, you're telling us not to go, but you're saying it's fine. I told him, I said, you're probably going to get lucky. There's going to be less people there, so they're going to drop the prices, so you'll be able to buy things cheaper.
So is he going for business or pleasure?
Pleasure, 2 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, what's odd, I haven't really looked at what's going on over there too much, just the little bit I have for the show. And this flood just is not going away.
No, it's a 50-year flood. They're calling it heavy monsoons. And what they're actually blaming it on now is over time they've taken the rice paddy fields and turned them into factories, paved over the roads. So now there's no place for the water to go anymore. It doesn't have any room for absorption. So the water's just sticking on the surface and it's flooding. So they're saying they didn't build canals for the water to escape. They didn't take any of the precautions that were needed. They just kind of built haphazardly. And now they're blaming it on the people, in sense, that own the property. They don't want to give up their land for any of these canals, so this is a problem that's going to continue in the future.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the Sony camera has also affected Nikon, it's affected Canon.
Correct.
And something you may not think of right away, and you mentioned this before the show, is hard drives. And while as a photographer we think of lenses and cameras and camera bodies and things like that, hard drives is also something that as a photographer we really need, to store all of our images. And if you're like Tim and I shooting RAW, you eat up those hard drives pretty fast. And what did you say the hard drives were up to now?
Well, I bought a couple. Actually, just recently I bought a couple of 2 terabyte drives. I paid $69 for them, and now they're up over $200.
So the price has gone from $69 a piece to $200, over $200 a piece.
And that's just. I mean, I just built a server with 8 hard drives in it. So at $69, it was reasonable. At $200 plus a piece, that's no longer reasonable.
Yeah, I guess, at this point, if you hope that you can just wait it out. And, when they come back online. I remember there was a fire at a RAM factory where they made memory, a long time ago. And everybody feared that the prices would skyrocket. And I think they did for temporarily.
Right, you had some profit taken, I'm sure, at the beginning.
Yeah, but eventually, you look at prices now where I just bought the 16 gig of RAM for like $80.
Yeah, they're next to nothing anymore.
Which is crazy. So, hopefully, eventually, hard drive prices will come down. I think I'm set right now. But if you're in the market for a new PC, even a new PC, unless the manufacturer has a supply they can pull from, they're going to have to be paying those prices too. So even a PC is probably going to go up in price.
I did read some things with that, and they said a lot of the PC manufacturers have a lot of hard drives in stock. But yeah, I can't imagine they're going to have that many, or maybe they're going to get first come, first feed, and then the Newegg's of the world will not have it. Now, I did go by Best Buy the other day, and they had not jacked up their prices. I was kind of surprised. They actually had a 3 terabyte drive for, I think it was $179, but I wanted to get a couple of extra drives for my RAID. So I need to get 2 terabyte drives. I don't want to buy myself a 3 terabyte because it's going to do me no use anyway.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Um, so right before I came down here, I had two surprises. One is my wife says, "Hey, this weekend." First off, let me step back. My son is on the high school swim team. He made the swim team a week or so ago, so
Congratulations.
very very excited for him. So as I'm coming down, getting ready to come down here, my wife says, "Oh, hey, by the way, did I tell you that you are the official photographer for the swim meet this weekend?" So, no, you have not told me that. I don't remember volunteering for that either. And I guess unlike maybe some other photographers, I tend to like to try things out first. Try things out. I would love to have gone to swim meet, taken all these photos with no pressure, and none of them turned out fine. I don't have to worry about it. And that way I can learn. And then whenever somebody says, "Hey, do you want to be the official photographer?" I'm all set. I've worked out most of my kinks and I'm ready to go. So this is going to be a time where I'm going to have, pool access. I'm going to be down in the pool, which is good and bad. I also am the type of photographer where I like to be hidden. I like to be taking my photos in a sense where I'm unseen, not physically unseen, not invisible, but where I'm not any kind of a center of attention. And I realize that when I'm down there taking photos of the kids swimming, that most people are going to be cheering and yelling and screaming for their kid and not paying any attention to me. But I still will have that self-conscious feeling of that. And I don't know. I look forward to it in a way, and I'm also nervous about it.
Well, I've never taken any sort of competitive swim pictures, and gotta imagine it's got to be difficult. I mean, is it going to be indoors?
Yes.
So it's going to be under those sodium lights for one thing.
Yeah.
Then you're going to need a wide open lens, I would think, to stop any sort of action, because otherwise it's got to be difficult because focusing in on it. I can imagine how many pictures you're going to be taking.
So I wonder if
I would say take these pictures in JPEG because you're gonna fill up your buffer quick.
I was just thinking the same thing. So like everything I do, I tend to like to overdo everything. So I can see me taking both my D2H and my D2X, having both the 50 millimeter, 85 millimeter, and the 70 to 200, bringing all those, bringing a flash with two full sets of batteries, which I probably will never even use the flash. And maybe I don't know, several memory cards. So I'm going to bring this big old bag, and I'll probably end up using one lens.
Don't drop it in the pool, though.
Yeah, and Steven out in chat, step off what I'm saying just here for a second. Steven out in chat's
full moon tonight.
If anybody wants to break out the big lens. Yeah, I noticed as it's coming down. It would look, not only was it here where I am, not only was it a full moon, but it looked like there was some nice clouds coming over. Yeah, I always see these nice scenes that I want to take photos of, but whenever I set up to take the photo, it just doesn't seem to be there. I don't know. So I'm a little nervous about that shoot this weekend. It's obviously not a paid thing; it's just for fun, and I don't have to take just photos of the kids in the water. Yeah, there'd be plenty of action outside of the water. And I got that big, I got a big 16 gig card. I'll take that. I'll take my 4 gig and some other cards, so I'll be good to go. I may try it out with. I'm going to start off shooting raw, and we'll see how it goes. I'm mostly worried about what kind of lighting I'm going to get.
That would be my. I mean, granted, raw can help with that to recover. So, but I know sodium lighting. It's not the most powerful lighting. It's going to be hard to get good exposures on it.
Well, with my D2X, and it obviously doesn't have a lens on it right now. It's an older. It's a nice camera. It's rock solid, especially when I have this bracket thing on it. But it's really, when you get above 800 ISO, it's just not that great, and I'm worried about having to go above that.
Yeah, I mean, newer cameras are getting better and better with the higher ISOs. But
Absolutely.
There's only so much money you can spend on cameras.
I had, as I'm walking into the office this morning, I had a guy who, I think I told you before, he bought a Sony.
Yeah.
The guy in the office bought a Sony. So he says, Mike, I I want to tell you that I've been taking photos of that with my camera, and I'm thinking I'm getting close to professional level here. These things are just incredible. And what it is he was taking photos in a situation where his to his eye almost it was too dark, and he said I took this photo, I looked at it, and there's all kind of colors that just came out fantastic. And that's I think Sony is the maker of most of Nikon's sensors. So Nikon has these incredible ISO ranges on their newer cameras, and I think Sony is pretty much in that same ballpark, where you can take these photos that really, when you step back just a few years with my camera, they can't over 800, it starts getting noisy, where you can be at 6400 or 12,800 on one of those and get images that are probably cleaner than my 800.
Then your 800. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I could take 800 and they'll come out okay, but I know if I set it to 1600 and then if I forget to set it back, I regret every single time those pictures.
Yeah, so that's going to be a big struggle. I do have some fast lenses. You have the 85-1.8 I can shoot with, and I love the 85-1.8. I wonder now. I'm just sitting here thinking. I've been wanting the 35.
I was just thinking the 35. Did you ever get it?
No, but I am a Prime member on Amazon, and I could order that and have it by Friday. Is my wife listening?
That wasn't that expensive of a lens.
No, they're not that expensive.
I think that was on the 200. The question is, will you have it by Friday, though? I mean,
that would be the question.
Because you might have missed the shipping cutoff already for today.
Yeah. So, and here, which camera is this? Oh, this is the D2H. Okay. Then this one I was showing you is the 2H, not the 2X. The other thing, I said there was two things. The other thing is, that same boy who is now a sophomore in high school, and his Facebook page was just playing games and doing whatever else, and neither one of my kids want me to take photos of them doing anything. It just completely turned off the photos. Well, as I'm sitting there recovering from my wife telling me that I'm the team photographer this weekend, he comes down and he says, "Dad, I need you to take some photos of me this weekend." And he's got all these ideas of what he wants me to take photos of him, he plays the guitar. He wants me to take photos of him, holding the guitar at an angle and all these things. All these things I've wanted to do with him in the past that he never would let me. He now wants me to do because he wants to put them on his Facebook page where he has a bunch of high school female friends.
That's the motivation.
He now has realized that probably all those stupid games that he was playing on there, that his whatever, I don't know what, but his whole Facebook page was really about him playing these stupid games. He's now, I think, grown past that, and now he's worried about how the girls look at it when they come. So he wants some good photos for the girls. He said, "Dad, I want you to make me look sexy."
Oh my goodness gracious! I'm not ready for that. Thank God my son's 9.
No, it's he is almost 16, but I would rather hear that from my son than a daughter, because that would drive me nuts if it was a daughter.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad I have a boy.
Yes, I'm glad I have a boy, but he doesn't look. He's in much better shape than me. He's a high school swimmer, so these will be PG photos. These are not going to even be PG-13. He's not that old. So that is that. There was something else I was going to tell you. Oh, yeah, I don't remember what it was. Oh well,
it'll come back to you.
Yeah. So what did we want to do tonight? I think I wanted to show you some go over the Lightroom
Smart
collections, and I want to see. We're going to try this where people out in chat can see it too. Where actually you can see it. I mean, otherwise, we're in two different locations. You wouldn't be able to see it. So I'm going to open up Lightroom, and then we'll get.
Well, I guess a good question for chat. We have 7 people out there. Well, that's probably including us. How many people are using Lightroom out there? And have we converted anybody yet?
For Lightroom to have a nice sale or something.
Yeah, I just saw it for $89.
You did?
Yeah, with a student discount. I think it was gradway.com. I saw it.
All right, I am going to see if I can share my screen here. Share screen. Oh, Steven just got CS5.
Yeah. We'll convert him yet.
Okay, so I need to increase the size here just a tad.
Well, that's definitely an HDR picture.
So can you see? You can see that now. I don't know if the quality is going to be enough where you can tell what I'm doing, but we'll give it a shot. So that's actually a shot I took this weekend. I went back. This is the Swanee Town Center I go to all the time, and I went here this weekend and try to take something a little different than what I usually did. Now, the problem with this, I'm not going to go too much over this, but this goes into why I'm having all this trouble with my HDR right now. I can't get it to do right. And if I come up into this section, you see right in here, along the leaves of the tree,
right, the fringe,
where the sky meets the leaves of the tree, it's just not merging very well. I'm having a lot of trouble getting that to merge well. And then the sky itself, really, the actual sky in real life looked much better than this.
Now the sky was I mean, I'm assuming your exposures were relatively quick in between.
They were.
And the sky wasn't moving or anything?
Not very much. It wasn't moving all that much. And I actually, this is what I also wanted to talk to you about. We can talk about it while I got this pulled up, because I did it at this location. I decided, you know what? It seems like everybody comes on this show, shoots in manual, and I'm the only person who doesn't. And while I can't see a reason why I'd want to, in special situations I would, of course, but why I can't see why I'd want to, I must be wrong because everybody else shoots that way. So this is one of those cases, if everybody else is doing something, it could be you. It could be you that's wrong. So I decided I'm going to shoot with manual out here. And I went here and I, used on my camera, I've got the little button that I can spot meter. So I spot metered all the different places and said, okay, I'm going to shoot at this. And I did. I shot in manual mode. And I said, all right, one thing that shooting in manual mode did for me was it made me a little bit more aware of the different exposures in the scene.
Okay.
So I had to pay a little more attention to what area I wanted to expose properly when I wasn't shooting HDR. This was just shooting the normal shot. And I did that, and the shot came out all right. But I'm still wanting you to try and convince me that is the way I should go. Because what I would normally do in a scene. So let's say this scene here, which is HDR, so it doesn't really assume this is not HDR. But in this scene, you really had a lot of different exposures. You had
you have quite a few. I mean, this is not something that, unless you're doing HDR, you're going to get all the exposures in. You're going to have, there's quite a wide dynamic range in this picture.
So actually what would happen if I'm shooting in aperture mode and I have using matrix metering, which is what I normally use, which is going to evaluate the entire scene. If I'm shooting a matrix meter, it's probably going to say, wow, that's in that upper right-hand corner, there's a bright sun. I'm going to try not to overexpose that, and then the whole rest of the image is going to be underexposed.
Correct.
So what I would normally do, because I shoot in aperture mode, is I would just, I'm going to say this wrong, so I'm just going to, we'll figure it out later, add or subtract exposure.
Exposure value. That's exactly what I would have done. I would have added plus 1 to plus 2.
Yeah, so I'd add a stop or two to the exposure, which would have blown out the sun, which would be fine. And, if I had the shot, let's say your kid was standing there, you want to take a picture of him. But let's say if I added two stops and that exposed it properly, but then the sun changed slightly, aperture exposure is going to make that slight adjustment automatically in the light by changing the shutter speed. But if in manual mode, I'm going to have to make those changes on the fly, or just be a third of the stop under overexposed as the light slightly changes.
Well, yeah, because I mean, where you have the light here, it's going to get behind a tree branch, and your exposure is definitely going to change by the minute.
Yeah,
the sun's setting at this point, so.
So I come back to, the thing I did like about shooting manual was how it made me more aware of the different exposures in the scene.
Well, what I also like about manual shooting, it forced me to pay more attention to everything inside the viewfinder. I really started looking more at what is the exposure and what is happening. And then as I'm looking in there, if the exposure is changing, the meter is going to change in there, and you could see that you're suddenly going to underexpose, you're going to overexpose. So you can, I mean, I don't know if your camera has it. I know mine.
It does.
I have the front dial that is my shutter speed, and the rear dial is my aperture setting. If I see it changing, I can instantly change it as I'm looking at the scene. Now, like I said, when I'm doing Jack's soccer games, I'm not doing manual. I tried it, I think, a couple of times, and I had more problems than anything. I probably wound up tossing out probably most of the pictures, because they were exposed wrong. So now I shoot that generally an aperture priority, so that at least I'll get the right exposure.
Yeah, that's when I was shooting soccer, I like that about aperture exposure, because what I would typically do is do a spot metering on. Let's say you had, typically would have a team wearing black, or a team wearing white, and it's like, good gosh, so one of them is going to be, it's going to be over or underexposed if you're using something like center weighted. So I would.
Right.
Maybe if they're in white jerseys, I would take a little bit of exposure off. If they're going to be in black jersey, I'd add a little bit of exposure to get that. But I would do that with the EV and stay in aperture priority. And that way, as the sun is making its slight changes, and when I say slight, you could be at 1/1000 1 second, and 1/640 the next second, or even 1/500. You can lose or gain a stop of light within a couple of seconds.
Absolutely.
If the cloud, if the sun
especially
goes
in a scene
cloud,
like this. I mean, if that sun's moving down, well, obviously it's going to go down, and it gets behind a branch, you're going to lose a lot of light suddenly. Especially in matrix. I mean, if you're doing spot metering, no, it's not going to impact it. But if you're doing a matrix metering here, yeah, the light's going to suddenly drop off substantially. I mean, and suddenly those red bricks normally in the scene would not be exposed. They would be black in the scene. It would be totally shadowed out, I would think.
Yeah, and right. So even on a soccer field, when you don't have the trees like this, and it's maybe the middle of the day, but as cloud can come through, you come between you and the sun. So, in what cases do you use manual?
Any portrait photography, anything where the scene is not changing a lot.
Okay.
Even landscape scenes, I will take manual exposure, portrait, family pictures. I've done it like at a friend's wedding. I do it manual there now. And really, where I really saw my most benefit with my manual was when I was doing flash photography. That's where I really got the best benefit out of it. Because somebody, a photographer, showed me this a couple of years ago, and to stop down the exposure. Now it's not always easy, because now you're introducing into it a lot of shake, so that the background of your picture gets exposed. Because a lot of my old flash pictures, you'd get the front exposed nicely, and then the entire background was dark and black. And by slowing down the shutter speed a lot, I was able to get the background where it may not be as bright, but you could see what's behind suddenly. And now it looks like what you see when you're there. And I get a lot of compliments on my flash pictures. As a matter of fact, I even had I think I probably screwed up a photographer at a wedding where he was trying to overdo it. Yeah. And he messed up the pictures of the bride and groom. And he was the professional there. And they actually went with my pictures to the photographer and wanted them to use my pictures in their wedding album.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, that's just bad blood. I hope I never see that photographer in my life, because
yeah, he's not gonna like you.
No.
I got a lot of articles I want to write. One of them is related to that, where let's say you've got you sitting there. Now people can't see you right now because we got the photo up, but you're sitting there, and let's say there was a window behind you, and it was a bright window. There's not one in this case, but if there was one behind you, and I shot you, now what's going to happen is either that window is going to be blown out and you're going to be properly exposed, or the window is going to be properly exposed and you're just going to be a silhouette.
I'm going to be a silhouette to it.
You can, with a flash, taking a flash and adding yeah, I think it's you add exposure and you subtract exposure when your camera. So you make them go in different directions. Your camera is going to underexpose, your flash is going to overexpose, and when that happens, I may be saying this backwards, but I'll have to do a write-up on it so we can get it right. What you're doing is having your flash and your camera exposed at two different rates, and what that will actually do is get both you and the window exposed properly.
And I think on my camera it might be the high-speed shutter for and I know I'm not explaining it either, but yeah, that is the most pleasing picture, because I have a picture like that where, and this is going back quite a few years, where my wife was holding my son up against the living room window, and it took a couple of pictures to get it correct, and suddenly she was exposed with him sleeping on her shoulder, and outside was a heavy snowstorm, and you could actually see it. I was like, it was just the perfect picture.
And I think here I'll say it this way. So with the camera, you would expose for the window. With the flash, you would expose for the person. And then you end up getting both of them. And you could also do this outside. Let's say you're at a beach and you got the sun behind you. Now the sun is a lot of light, so you're gonna need a little bit of power here. But if you can play with this where you could expose for the person. And too bad I didn't know we were going to talk about this, because I've seen some photos on Google Plus by this guy who's done this, and it's just fantastic. They look fantastic when you see them, where the person is exposed properly because of the flash, and the background with the beach and the sun and everything's exposed properly with the camera. It just looks really, really good.
Well, I would definitely be interested, because even though I created that picture that time, probably couldn't tell you how I did it.
Well, yeah, I tried it one time. I've tried it several times, and it takes me a lot of trial and error. You're making a camera, adding and subtracting exposure, doing the same thing to the flash, back and forth, and then finally get it. So I'm definitely not good enough to look at the scene and make the adjustment in just a couple of shots. It may take me 10 shots to get it just right. But tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about collections. We talked about this in the past, collections in Lightroom. And I'm going to see if I can get in here close enough where people can see it. See if I shrink this window, if it makes it any better. I don't know if we're going to be able to get this big enough. We'll try. All right, now in Lightroom, there's all the collections that you can have. I have collections are not necessarily, they're not things on a hard drive. So when you take stuff off your card, it stores it on whatever place you want it to on the hard drive, and we've gone over that in the past. But you can also have collections. These are just entries in a database. So they're not really copying the photo anywhere. It's just an entry in a database, and you can have the same photo in multiple collections.
And I think that's the major benefit. You're not making 5 copies of a certain picture to say, you know what, I want this picture in Mom's photos, but it's also part of projects, and it was a sports picture. That you don't have 3 separate folders with all those pictures.
Right. So in this case, you can see one of mine is sports. So I can go to sports, and I can go to soccer, and and I can go to whatever else shoot I have there. And that's one of the ways. There's no one way to do things in Lightroom. There's multiple ways you can do this. So I'm not going to preach that. But I might have soccer and have different shoots here under soccer. But those you have to manually add them yourself. You have to add those photos into those collections. There is something built into Lightroom called Smart Collections. And with Smart Collections, oops, it's gotten off a little bit here. Here we go. With smart collections, you can actually have them automatically add images to it. So for instance, if we go to my camera, you'll be able to see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different cameras listed here, and it automatically adds them to this thing anytime I'll upload one. So if I upload, Nikon D2X's images from a Nikon D2X, they'll automatically be added here.
Right, and anytime you want to see which pictures you took with that camera, you can just click on that, and those pictures will appear on the screen.
Yeah, so let's go to like lens. If I go to the lens, and I look at Nikon 70-200, and it says I have in this catalog 20,243 images in it. So let's take a look at how you build one of these. So right click, you right click on it. You would normally say create smart collection, but in this case I'm going to say edit smart collection so you can see it. And let me get that so you can see it. Can you see that yet, Tim?
Yeah, it's starting. Yes, it's completely on the screen now.
Okay. You have a choice here when you go to create one of these smart collections. And you write. It's not this. You're never going to see all of this.
Well, and also what everybody should know is this is in the metadata that comes in with the camera right away. What lens is attached to it? It's not stuff you're entering in afterwards. It's automatic. A lot of this information is automatically there once you take the picture.
Yeah, and then for whatever reason, it's not going to show you when I do the pull down menu. But what you can, this little thing here where it says lens, as you're talking about, it comes across in the metadata. For whatever reason, I think maybe it's just because I had 2 lenses. You can see here I have 2 entries. I have this one entry here, that's the Nikon one, and I have another one, 7200 2.8. That might have been the Sigma lens, the one I had at 72.8. So I choose from this drop-down list. Here it's a long list of all these different things you can choose from. I'm not going to be able to show it to you in chat, but I will, read off a few of them. It's you have the star rating, you have your capture date, you have your file type, you have location, city, aperture, ISO speed reading, whether you use a flash or not, shutter speed, focal length, all these different things. It's a long list of things that you can choose from. And these, for the most part, most of these things, like you mentioned, Tim, are recorded for you in the metadata. So every time you take an image, all this data about the lens, the focal length, the aperture, the shutter speed, all these different things are recorded with the image in the metadata of that file. And so when you bring it into Lightroom can read all those things. And if you say in this smart collection, all right, look in the lens metadata field and pull off any image that has this AFS VR zoom, on, and put it into this collection. So automatically any image I take with that lens will be added into that collection. And then I can go back and look at it. Now you may wonder, why would I ever want to go back and look at it? But sometimes I do. I want to go back and look at, what are some of the images I've taken with my 51.4, or I want to look at what are some of the images I've taken. I think I have it under style, that have a black and white keyword, or camera settings. That's where it is. What are the ones that I've got actual bunch of different focal lengths, ISOs. And I need to put this back where you can see it in chat. I have a whole bunch of different ISO ranges here.
Right. So, sometimes you never know why you need something, but it's nice to know that it automatically will capture these. Yeah, and you're not, once you have the smart collection set up, you don't do anything after that.
I don't. No,
it's the picture's automatically added.
It's a one-time setup. So you can see in this case, it looks like I've taken 19 images at ISO higher than 3200. Now, I would imagine if I ever get one of those Nikon D3s, that I will be shooting a whole bunch at that level.
And above.
And above. But here, if I'm, let's say I want to go back and look at, and maybe I got a new noise program and I want to test against some really bad ones. Heck, I know I got 19 of them above 3200 I can test right there. So and these are just a few examples. You may care less about. I don't care. I'm never going to look back at and care about finding all my images taken at ISO 3200, or a different shutter speed. I have shutter speeds here too. I'm never going to care about that, but maybe there's some others that you care about.
Well, one of the smart collections that I created last year was all my friends' names in there, and I gave them a CD then right after the new year of all the pictures that I had of them. So now that smart collection, anytime I take a picture of them this year and I add their name and as a keyword, is automatically added to there. So at the end of the year now, all I have to do is go right to that collection, burn those pictures to a DVD, and they're there. I don't have to go looking through every one of my pictures. But of course, it's what you put into it at the beginning after you take the pictures is what gives you the end of what's going to be in the smart collection. If you don't put the data in there when you take the picture, it's not going to be there.
Right. And that is, we've talked about keywords in the past, and if the more of that you can do in the front end, the better and the easier it's going to be to find your photos. When you have a lot of photos, if you've done that legwork on the front end, it's really going to pay off later on. That using keywords with the smart collection is a very powerful thing, like you just did, Tim. It does require you to do that extra step, but even if you don't do that extra step, there are just so many different things that you can choose from. I mentioned a few of them earlier. So many different things you can choose from, that may be more important to you. Even I don't know, maybe the camera. Maybe if you have different cameras, you might want to be able to choose that. Whether it's shot with a flash or not. There's even if your camera records GPS data, you can record that too.
That was the other thing I liked about the A77. It includes the GPS data right away.
Yeah, mine does not have GPS data in it, but if you had GPS data in your camera, that's a smart collection you could create. If I guess if you have a title or a file name, let's say if you put your shoot name in the file name, you can use that. Or there's even one called any searchable text. Here's another one, published via, meaning you published it to something like Facebook or Flickr or something like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And there's another one, ratings. So let's say if in Lightroom, as you going through and looking at your photos, you use the star rating, which I do use a star rating, and I have one of those like that. So if you use a star rating, anytime you star one, depending on how you set up the smart collection, anytime you star one of those images, it'll automatically be added into that. It's a very powerful feature of Lightroom, and the organizing of your images, because I think first and foremost, Lightroom was designed to be an image organizer. Digital asset management.
I agree with that. And it really, that's where it excels. I mean, Photoshop, while it's a wonderful program, and I probably use less than 20% of its capability, and probably less than 10%. When it came to the storing of my pictures, I was not pleased with Bridge. And I think that was ultimately what made me go over and say, you know what, I've read enough about Lightroom to realize it's probably they always said it was for the photographer, which is really what I was using it for. And I really like it. And you could find any picture at any time.
Yeah, and these smart collections just make it even nicer.
Painless.
Ever since Lightroom has grown past, it still is mainly a digital asset manager, but it also does so much more now. It has a lot of editing capabilities and a lot of that stuff built into it. I'm trying to find an image here. I'll probably never do this one right. So, we've talked before, Tim, about layer mask in Photoshop.
Right.
And have you done that before?
I've done it a couple of times. I actually did it for a Christmas picture of Jack where I wanted to colorize just certain parts of it, and the rest was black and white.
So, we're getting close to the hour. I think tonight we wanted to keep it close to an hour. I was going to close and see if I can do this. We are doing this on a different PC, which really helps out because I have the broadcast server worried about broadcasting, and then my PC can handle the things I'm about to do. So for whatever reason, whenever you right-click on one of these things, it doesn't show up in the. I guess these screen grabs can't pick it up. But as I right-click on this and I say Edit In, it gives me a choice, and I can say Edit in Photoshop CS5, or if I had CS4, CS2, whatever, it would say that. We do have to wait for, I didn't have Photoshop loaded, so we're going to have to wait for it. But it was going to pull this image in there, and then I'm going to do a quick little thing on using layer mask.
Well, I would imagine Steven's done this then.
Steven just got CS5. I wonder if he has done this before. Steven, you ever done layer mask?
Oh,
there it is. There you got it. I think the problem is I have a dual monitor, so yeah. Steven says great card. I have a dual monitor, and all my tools are on a second monitor. And I think when you share a screen and the actual program is split between two different screens, it probably doesn't like it.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So what
there's a lot of bandwidth going through at this point too.
Yeah. So it's going to mess up a couple of times here, but I'm going to duplicate the layer, and now I have a duplicate layer, and I am going to let's get rid of that layer. I'm going to create a exposure. No. Gotta find the right one. Create a new layer, new group. I can create an exposure layer. So this is a new layer that's for the exposure, and I'm going to. You're probably going to lose this again. Look at that. Anytime I put my cursor over there, the screen goes away. You would have the second layer that you would look at these bright spots, and you'd expose just for those bright spots, which would make everything else underexposed. So the image itself would look pretty bad. But then as you got your paintbrush and you painted over this section, it would then come through, it would, I wonder if I can invert that. Hey, look at that.
Yeah,
you can kind of see what's happening there. I would have to do this all in the opposite, where I would expose everything else on her face except for those bright spots. I don't want to really.
Right, but now you can see how you got the adjustment. It's showing the original picture behind it.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I did when I did the black and white picture with Jack, and just anything that was red was colored in, and everything else was black and white.
Yeah, and obviously this is not an editing job you would ever do, but you can see what it's. You can see.
She's
what
got a
it's
Halloween
doing.
mask on.
Yeah, you can see what it's doing. Yeah. The other thing, now that you've done this, so let's say you're only going to do around the eyes, or let's just do the nose. You're only going to do the nose. Ooh, I probably wanted to do the around that underneath that eye. But you can see that just looks crazy. But you can come to this thing and now back down the blend.
Correct.
So that it's not quite as bad. As you can still see, it looks like she's wearing some kind of thing over her nose.
Right, she's got a Band-Aid over her nose.
But I also intentionally bumped the exposure down like by almost 2 stops. So that's really too far. So you would do a much less. You got to do these things in very small increments.
Increments, right? Because otherwise it does show, no doubt about it.
Yeah. So in this case, I erased way too much with white, or with black. I'm sorry. So if I go back to white, I can bring back. I can say, I wanted to do underneath her eyes. You can reverse it and paint back in the opposite color, black or white, to bring that color back. to bring those exposures for that layer that you wanted to come back in. And you would probably zoom in, and you have a much finer brush than what I have here, and really do something. Another thing you could do is if you wanted to whiten up her teeth.
Right, that's something that's probably done on a lot of pictures you see in magazines.
Yeah, I wonder if I can. Let's do another layer. Let's see if this is going to work. Exposure. I'm going to bump this one up. And then I'm going to I want to get a really big brush so I can do this fast. Okay, so now I've painted all that in. And I am going to go back to white, get a much smaller brush, and come in here to her teeth as much as I can. I should be using my pen. And now she has glowing teeth. Now, obviously, I'm overdoing this stuff so y'all can see it, but I would, bring down the layer mask and not give it a two-stop, increment here. But you can see it's fairly easy to come in here and paint. Now, really what you do is zoom into the teeth.
Now, have you tried this with your Wacom tablet yet?
I have, and as you can see, I missed a whole lot of sections there on the teeth. But I could get much more precise with it if I'm doing with my.
Right. If you're going to do it, you're going to make a small brush to get around each of the edges.
Yeah, you're going to do that. But if you mess up, you can always switch back to a black and come back in here and kind of chew some of it up.
Put her lip back on.
Put her lip back on. Up here. Put that back in. And since this is an exposure layer, you can do a couple of things. You can change the exposure. Now I've got it bumped up quite high, so you can see the glow here in chat. But you can only give it maybe a half a stop or maybe a stop, depending on how much you want to do, and do that, and then you can use the opacity. I was using fill. I was using the wrong thing. I wanted to use the opacity thing here. So you use the opacity to blend that in even better. And this is never going to look right on here. But you can do that. You can go into the zoom into the eyes and do a similar thing where you bring through a little bit of the add a little brightness to the eyes. Whoops. Not very neat at all. There you go. Now she looks like she's some kind of alien.
Yeah. You can really make it look cartoony.
You can. So let me zoom back out. So when I zoom out, you can't quite see all my problems that I did. But if I go back to the original, see how I brightened up her eyes?
Yeah. Now you can see when you flash back and forth like that.
Yeah, all the other little stupid things I did are distracting from that. And none of this is done, great. But you can kind of see what you can do with a layer mask.
Like everything else, it takes a lot of practice to get it right.
It does take practice, and it takes time. You'd want to zoom in and do a much better job than what I did. You don't want to pay much more attention to the exposure that you're adding. You can't go crazy. If you've really underexposed the eyes, you're not going to be able to do a lot with it. This is more just fine tuning. I've seen Scott Kelby has some videos out there where he's using Wacom tablet. He goes in here into the eye, and he removes all these little red lines.
Right, gets rid of all the bloodshot lines.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily you doing with a layer mask. That's using with the clone tool. But that takes some time. So, but the reason why he's getting rid of these little bitty imperfections is because his image starts off, with hardly any problems in it. He's not blowing out the nose and the forehead and the cheeks like I have here. Anyway, that's the last little bit that I had. I think we lost a few people. They probably went over to the home service show.
Actually, might only be, they went over to the home service show.
Yeah. That's really, we're at the hour mark. That's all I had for tonight, Tim. Steven, thanks for coming out. I think we had Andy out there earlier. We had
Once Adored out there. Road Wave is still out there.
We had Vinyl Freak. Yeah. We got to 6 or 7.
Obviously, people don't come to listen to us. Now we know it's the guests. Thank you, everybody.
Well, I mentioned before that we're going to have Rachel back on, and she's going to be doing a giveaway. Part of the rules for that giveaway is you're going to have to do something for us. You have to like our Facebook page. You're going to have to. There's a number of things. I think I have a list of 10 things that you can do. Each one you do is another entry into the contest. The first one is a must. You must at least like the Facebook page. The other ones are things like subscribe to the show, join our forums, leave a comment on iTunes, which we still only have 9 comments.
Yeah, I put mine up there a couple weeks ago, and I really thought after Rachel was on or Ashley, we would get more comments out there, but I guess they don't go there right away. And if you don't do it right away, you're not going to think of it.
And then next week we're back with a guest, so maybe we'll have a few more people.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And I like doing Google Plus. It obviously brings in some issues, but I think it has to do with the screen scraping that technology that both Google Plus and Skype uses. Is that we are limited in some of the things we can show. I probably also need to set up Photoshop when I'm going to do something like this where it's not on multiple screens. It's really convenient when you're using Photoshop in a normal situation. I've got a portrait screen here, a screen that's long, and I've got all my tools on that, and then I have the image big on one screen, on another screen, and it's really nice to edit that way. But whenever you're doing this, a show like this, it does not like it.
Well, I tend to like Google Plus over Skype as well. I think we have less issues. There's more we can do with it.
Yeah, like if you wanted to share the website you're looking at for for that flood or for Call of Duty or whatever it was you just looked up, all you have to do is share screen, and then we can see what you're doing, and we can go back and forth.
Oh, that is cool.
Well, I think I'm gonna head out. I don't know if this is an actual show or not part of the show, but I'll have to find a spot to actually cut the show off. But Stephen, again, thanks you for coming out, and Tim, thank you for rushing back from the soccer fields.
Not a problem.
We'll see all you guys back regular time next week, Tuesday night, 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So, good night, Tim. Good night, Stephen, and whoever else is left out there.
Good night, all.
Good night.